Welcome to Beyond the Studio. So, at any moment in time, the best camera you could possibly have with you is the one you already have, right? Our cell phones are with us all the time. And when I was just starting out in photography, I would always carry my camera with me at any be in my trunk. I was ready to go. But now it's in our pockets. But one of the things we wanted you guys to realize is it being the default go-to camera, it doesn't always give us exactly what we're looking for. So, what many of us already realize is we could probably do better than just point and shoot as far as it comes to making photographs, right? Hey, we all already work for a photography company. So, this is just one of the perks of working for Interstate is getting into some of these details and getting into how we make our phones work better for us. Some of the things I want to hit again is and intro ideas is where is the light coming from? Again, how is it hitting your subject? What is the quality of the light? Is it hard or soft? What I mean by that is it cloudy or is it sunny? All of these things can affect your final picture. The difference between what our eyes can see versus what the camera is able to see, that highlight to shadow range, they call it brightness range. It seems like it can do a lot with our cameras, but again, to get the best possible image, we want you guys to start taking notes of basically where we're moving our subjects or how we're moving the cameras because the camera is doing most of this for us. So let's get back to it. Joy, if you could hit
All
play.
right, guys. So one of the things we really need to learn, one of the first things you need to learn when you're learning to take better pictures is to see what the light is doing to your scene. So we're out here today and it's a beautiful, beautiful day, but we've got this bright sunlight and we happen to spot this really cool background that we want to take a picture in front of. But with this bright sunlight, we need to kind of think about how to work with this lighting so it looks the best. So we take a look at Aaron. We're going to take Aaron's picture today. Right now, we have, in fact, I'm going to pull up on my camera here, and I'm going to position myself as though I'm going to take Aaron's picture. So yeah, turn right toward me, Aaron. Now, we've got this bright sunlight coming from the right side of the camera, and we might not think about it. This might be a good place to take the picture, but look what's happening. Aaron has to squint really bad, and the lighting on her face is very harsh from that direct sunlight. This wouldn't necessarily be the best place to do it. So let's explore some options. What if we move this way, Aaron? Come to the left a little bit. I still want you in the middle of this really cool street painting here. A little bit more to your right. Now we've got, it kind of looks like wings coming up. It almost looks like you're an angel, Aaron. But look at Aaron's face now. We have bright highlight coming from camera right and pretty deep shadow on camera left. And the camera, our eye can see this just fine, but the camera really can't handle that range of exposure very well. So I'm gonna go a little further. Let's go a little further to your right, Aaron. Keep going a little bit more. I wanna put you in the middle of these wings here again. Perfect. Now we have a better situation where we still have the wings and this really cool scene, but now the camera can better handle the exposure on Aaron's face because we mostly have shadow. I'm gonna go ahead and use exposure compensation a little bit too, and I'm gonna tap on Aaron's face, and then I'm gonna run that exposure up just a little brighter to bring that shadow side up. And now we have a really great shot. I'm gonna go ahead and take a picture of this. Aaron's got a nice smile this morning, and we've used this really cool scene.
All right. So that was a great example of using the sun really as a hair light, but I don't know if you guys have ever used your camera in that way on your cell phone where you actually tap on the subject's face and that will allow the camera to lock focus on that subject. And then it also gives you that exposure brightness slider, which I always tend to forget about, but as you touch, you can slide that up. Now it's going to be a little different on each of our phones and whether you have an iPhone or an Android. Regardless of the phone, it's still going to tap the screen to lock focus. And in many cases, that little slider may be something different or it may be something that you edit later. But the important part is using the subject and turning them away from that sunlight in that situation, because that situation she was squinting and it was not comfortable for her to be in that spot. Is there anything else you guys want to add to that, Steve or Aaron or Joey?
I would say that a lot of what we discussed in that video and what we're going to see moving forward are just going to be basic principles of seeing light. But not to forget the real reason for this particular edition of Behind the Studio is to use your cell phone, which is the camera that we have normally everybody has in their pocket all the time. So you're going to be learning some really good photographic theory here, but it can be utilized with this camera here because these are really good. Just like Frank said, there's a lot of tools inside your camera app that maybe you don't realize are there or how to use them. So hopefully along the way, you're going to see Steve working with these sliders and the lock buttons and things like that, and you can try it too.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Aaron. I was also going to mention something that I think we often do is we see a scene like that and we want that background. But if we notice that the sunlight is bad, maybe we don't sort of leap to the next step, is to say, I can still get that background right in the middle by moving the subject to a different position and changing the angle at the same time. So
Yeah.
we ended up with the same objective of having those wings in the background, right, sort of with you centered, but with the lighting completely different by moving you considerably and moving the camera even further.
Yeah. And you didn't paste her up against the background. That's like everyone's first instinct is put the subject right up against the wall, and then you don't quite line up with that. And the other part of it is that if you did show all of those wings, she would look really small. So you pulled her forward a little bit to give a little more depth. And I thought that was a really cool technique. But let's keep thinking.
Sometimes too, our first inclination is to face the subject wherever the light source is coming from. If it's the sun or whatever, is directly face the subject towards the light. I think sometimes is our first inclination. But like we saw in the video, with direct sunlight, that can more oftentimes than not be your best option. Sometimes it is to turn them away from the sun.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions on what we just covered? Come
This
on.
is an open forum, friends.
Yeah.
If you have questions, please feel free to say something.
Yeah, don't be shy. We're not. Come on. You can ask anything. There are no dumb questions ever. So please, if you have a question, stop us even. All right. Don't be shy. No questions. All right. Let's move on to the next little video here. So Aaron, take it away.
So along with moving your subject in relationship to the light, other things that we can look out for is the different characteristics of light. What's happening with the light? And starting to really see how we can change all the variables within our photograph to make our image more pleasing or what we want it to look like. So let's go ahead and watch this little clip and we'll discuss.
All right, Aaron, we've got this gorgeous tree in bloom right now, and we're going to take a picture right here. So what if I use this spot? I kind of like the building in the background. We've got that beautiful red brick and some cool windows, but I'm not crazy about you're being in the bright light. If I try to take your picture right here, I get that real nasty light. Let's go up closer to the tree. Back up, walk up there next to the tree. Oh, that's better. I like that. I even like how I have some of the tree on the right and the left creating a little bit of foreground. And I can tap on Aaron's face here to make sure that we have focus there on Aaron's face. And this is really nice. But wait a minute. What I see is I have what we call mottled light. I have bright patches of light hitting you in spots because it's coming through the tree. There's the sun up there, and it's coming through the tree and just creating all kinds of speckles. You look like a leopard or something, and maybe it shouldn't look that way. So how would we improve this? I think we need to move our position so that the sun is behind you more. So let's turn and let's walk around the tree. And by doing this, we're repositioning the sunlight to come over your shoulder. And now we have some bright sunlight there, but we can still see the blooms on this tree. And the tree itself is gorgeous. This is really pretty nice. Can you give me a hand up on your hip there and look right up at the camera? I really like this. I'm going to go ahead and get a shot right here. And there's that good Aaron smile. That's great. I'm going to come up a little bit higher. I can experiment with camera angles, look up at the camera a little bit, and I got to be careful what's in the foreground. I have a twig in front of you there, right here. This is great. I really like that. I think, though, we can even improve more on it. And what I'm seeing here that I want to fix is I have a busy background behind you. I have trees that have beautiful blooms on it, but it's kind of busy. So I'm going to use a tool called portrait mode. I'm going to jump over to portrait mode. And what this is going to do, it's going to take that background and make it a little bit blurry for us. And now the attention is completely on my subject. Oh, that is great. I love it. Perfect. Now, what if we improve this just a little bit more and we add a foreground element? I'm going to ask Aaron to grab a piece of this beautiful branch. We have these blooms, and kind of hold that up here. I'm going to come a little closer and hold that up as foreground. Now, you can see that what my camera is doing is it's focusing on the tree. So I'm going to tap on Aaron's face to put the focus there. And we still have this out of focus now foreground element, which gives us a little bit of an interesting look to our subject. Let's go ahead and get a nice smile. Look up at the camera for me, Aaron. That is awesome.
That video right there was really highlighting mottled or dappled lighting, whatever you want to call it. It's that spotty lighting. Normally happens when the light is coming through a tree or something to that effect. Not really a great look unless it's intentional. Like you will see some really high fashion photography where they have stripes of light or whatever. But if you're just using your cell phone to take nice pictures of your family, especially with a group, be careful and look for that lighting, because if that bright light hits at least one person in the group, computers don't do, and that's what these really are. These cameras are just computers with lenses. Don't do a very good job of seeing the whole dynamic range, seeing the really bright and the really dark all in one go. Our eyeballs are great at it because we're humans, and that's just the beauty of life. Computer's not that great at it, so it doesn't know what to do. It can't deal with that high range of bright light and dark light. So your best option is to try to minimize that as much as possible. So watch out for that dappled lighting, and just make sure it's not on your subjects, and you'll be better off.
Yeah. I like how he switched over to portrait mode. I usually forget about portrait mode. I'm always just, okay, photo, right? And one of the things the photo did was it created more depth of field, more depth of focus. So you saw the branches were sharp, you were sharp, and even that foreground element would have been sharp. But portrait mode softens that depth, and it basically tells your viewer, instead of all of this being important because everything is sharp, you're saying only this is important, and it's your subject, the person that you're capturing with that beautiful light, that you moved them, you adjusted. You have to find the answers. It's no different with a DSLR or a cell phone. You still have to look for where you want to be, and you have to create those answers. But portrait mode softened that depth and created a whole nother feeling to the picture. And they call it bokeh, where the focus is very shallow and your perspective is just on the subject, and that's all you really see is a nice sharp subject, and everything else kind of blurred out. Anyone else want to add anything to that? Any questions? How many of you in the group, just a quick raise of hands, if you turn, how many of you have seen dap or mottled light before? How many of you encountered it? Oh yeah, Oh, we got lots of hands. Hey. Oh,
Wow, look
good.
at that count go.
So what are we going to do different? You guys, what are we going to do different? We're going to turn our subject or move our position. And that's going to be a theme throughout all of these videos is, again, seeing the light and all the nuances that we can encounter. All right. Any questions or comments? Anybody want to say anything? Drake.
Yeah, this is more about the last one, and it's the sunlight button where you slide the light up and down a little bit. I was wondering, when is a bad time to use that, or is it what are the ins and outs of that button?
Oh, you're saying for the brightness, the adjustment for
Yeah,
brightness?
is there a bad time to use it in certain situations and such?
It's mostly just going to be used when your subject have a darker shadow. So you're just trying to brighten them up. You have no control over the camera fully, right? It's all automatic. It's all about where you're placing them, how you're moving the camera. But if you notice that you're setting it up and you realize, that shadow looks a little too dark, you can actually preset that exposure setting, and you're just adding a little more light where there wasn't, or the computer decided it didn't need it, right? And that's all personal preference. You can do it after as well, Drake, in your edit tools. So it's almost built in as far as editing after the fact as well. But it gives you a precursor where you can adjust that slider up. And there's not a whole lot of controls beyond that that you can directly affect. All those modes are what would take you into some of those other controls.
How does it remove light? How does it know what it looks like without the light?
It's not that it's removing it, it's just adding brightness. So when you look at, say, when we talk about histograms for our portraits, it's all a graph. It's just a scale. It's mathematical. And that graph shows you that exposure from the highlight side to the shadow side. It doesn't care what it is. It's always trying to get us back to the middle. So, someone else wants to join. But again, it's always trying to get us back to the middle. And if middle is predominantly, if the image is predominantly white, then it's going to think there's too much light, and it's going to shift and be a little bit underexposed. So that image was predominantly a brighter image, right? So Steve just pre-adjusted, and what does it do? It moves that scale over, it shifts that histogram over mathematically in the image, and we don't see it. It doesn't even, it's not something you even need to worry about. Just whatever seems bright, you can darken that down. Whatever seems dark, you can brighten that up.
And the last question, if I can get one more.
Drake,
Go ahead.
let me just add this to what Frank just said. If we want to compare it to, if any of you have a DSLR and you had an automatic mode on your camera, one of the automatic exposure modes, you probably also have what's called an exposure override. You can tell the computer, hey, you're wrong. I want you to go a little brighter than you think you need to be, or a little darker than you think you need to be. That's what you're doing here when you tap and hold on the screen and then drag up and down, is you're doing an exposure override to the computer's calculation. So what the camera will do is it's probably changing the f-stop or the ISO a little bit to make that change in the image. Okay. Okay, Drake, your next question.
Last one. It's just a minor detail, and that's when you do that, you said that you can also do it afterwards. Can you if you do it ahead of time, can you do it then even more afterwards because you just did it ahead of time?
Sure.
I would say, if I can hop in on this to a certain extent, yes. You can do editing afterwards, but you got to be careful, because really what you're doing in both situations is adjusting the pixels. And there are limits to how far you can go before you start deteriorating the actual pixel itself. So the answer is yes, but with boundaries. You don't, the rule of thumb that I live by is, if you can fix it in camera, you're better off. So
Yeah.
trying to do it in camera, then after the fact, you're always going to be better off getting it right before you take it than trying to fix it afterwards. But you can do some lightening and darkening in post-production. At that point, you're just painting on pixels. It's not actually changing the pixels. And there is a point where you can deteriorate them.
Right. You're better off moving your subject and making it look right.
Absolutely.
So we got Kim, Jocelyn, and Layla. Who wants to go first? They have their hands up here.
Oh,
They
I
might
think
have had,
maybe had it from earlier.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Okay.
that could be.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Anyone else with questions besides Drake? Those were great questions, Drake.
Yeah.
Good job, buddy.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, I think we can move on.
Yeah. So our next little segment, we're going to go indoors, and I want you guys, if you haven't already taken out a pad of paper and a pen, do so now because you need to take notes. Professor Aaron here is going to give us a whole college course in lighting in just a couple minutes, and we're going to talk about the 5 characteristics of light. We're going to talk about making choices on using our lighting to make our subject look better. And in particular, she's going to look at window lighting and all the different types of factors that come into that. So here we go.
Hi, friends. Okay, so here we are indoors now, and we wanted to take some time to talk about lighting and how we can use the light that we have, as well as the lights that we have on in our houses and wherever we happen to be. So whenever we're thinking about lighting, we want to think about the 5 characteristics of lighting. We've got direction. Which way is the light coming from? All right. We've got angle. At what angle is the light coming from? Up or down? That sort of thing. We have intensity, how bright, how soft that light is. We have quality. Is it a very diffuse light or is it a hard light? And then we have color. Is it more of a warm light or a cool light? With our LED bulbs these days, we can actually choose what color of light we like to see in our houses. We can take it to a cool white or a warm white. And all those characteristics are just choices that we make when we want to see how we want to see the light in the pictures that we make. So no right or wrong answer here. It's just a matter of what do you want in your photo. So as we're in this situation here, we want to look around and see the options that we have. So let's look around. At this point, we have in this room, we have several windows here. And then we also have our traditional indoor lighting. We have some nice lights over here that we could turn on or turn off. And we even have an overhead light up on the ceiling that we could turn on and kind of illuminate the entire scene. So let's make some changes just to see how we can affect the lighting in our environment. So we'll start with the windows. When it comes to windows, it depends on how big or how small they are. And then also, if you happen to have any sort of window dressing on there, you can utilize those to affect how the light looks in your situation. All right, so here we are at our window, and now we want to really discuss how we can utilize the window dressings, if you will, like these blinds, to affect the 5 characteristics of light. So whenever we are going to take pictures, we can change these things and make things look better or, however we want them to look. So let's start with our blinds here. At this moment, you can see the blinds are actually pointed upwards and just almost all the way closed. And what we see right now is a nice diffused light because the direction of the light has been changed from coming in the window to upwards and hitting the ceiling and filtering down, which is a very diffused, very nice and easy light. But because the blinds are closed as much as possible, faced upwards, the intensity of the light has actually decreased. So maybe we want a little more light in this situation. Well, I can simply just adjust the blinds a little bit. If you see, if I just change the angle of those blinds a little bit, well, the direction has changed ever so slightly, but it's still going upwards, but the intensity increased. So now it's a little brighter in this room. This gives us a little more light to work with. Makes our picture look a little more lighter. We like that. All right, now that we have angled the blinds to where they are flat, what has happened was a couple of the characteristics of the light has changed. Number one, the direction of the light. We're going from light coming inward, upwards and hitting the ceiling to the light coming directly in. So now light's coming directly at us. And that has also changed the intensity of the light. It's brighter, it's a little more harsh, and it's changed the color of the light. The color has gone from a warm color to more of a cool color. And again, this is whatever you want to look in your photo, but let's make sure that we're paying attention to these things to create the light we want to see. So we're going to take these blinds all the way down now to watch it happen. So as I bring them down a little bit more, there we go, all the way down. I'm going to come just I'll come just a little bit out right about there. So what we have here, again, things have changed. Where's our light coming from? Instead of coming directly in, now we're pointing downwards. So this light is pointing down towards the floor almost. What's happening here is that the light pointing down at the floor is actually bouncing upwards. And so now you see a little more illumination coming upwards rather than coming from the ceiling. It's a little different look. It's a matter of what you like to see, but maybe not the best for taking pictures and portraits of people. Plus, I've got a very intense light, and now I have very intense shadows. The color of the light is very blue. So maybe I don't want to necessarily do that. Maybe I just bring my blinds all the way down. The intensity of the light has definitely decreased. The color of the light has gone back to more of a warm look, but the direction of the light is definitely pointed downwards. Again, we'll start seeing a little bit of an upward reflection of that light. Maybe not the best for humans and things like that, but it's what you want to see. All these things can change just by how we modify the light that comes in, but it can also change by where we put our subject. So if I'm standing right here, before I go too far, I'm going to adjust my blinds back to an upward light because I think that looks nicer. So I'm going to adjust my blinds upwards and bring it out just a little tiny bit. Nice and bright, nice warm color. If you look at my face, it's a little more diffused on my face rather than being harsh. So as I step in front of the window here, the direction of the light is coming straight up and behind me. This puts me in shadow, puts me in shade. I am a silhouette, really. And it's not really helping me out. It's not being an effective use of my light. So let's take a picture and see what this looks like right now.
All right. There's a big silhouette.
All right, so there you see in the picture, I'm very much a silhouette. The light behind me is very bright and it's not the best way to take a picture. But I can change those characteristics of light by moving, being the subject of the picture. So if I moved just over here, now we can see the light is starting to graze past my face and past my body, which is illuminating me. So this would be more of an appropriate way to take a portrait. It would look better. So let's take a picture of this and see what it looks like.
Let's turn your face even more.
So as you can see there, we can do a lot of things to affect the characteristics of light with how we place our modifiers for the light, our blinds, our curtains, and things like that, but also where we put our subject.
Well, I'll bet you never thought so much about how you can use blinds inside a room on a window to completely change the look of the lighting. I can't wait to hear stories about the next time you are at a family gathering and you're over there adjusting the blinds to make things look better. Your family members are going to be really impressed. You know, in the moment when you're there doing the actual picture, you may not take as long to analyze everything as Aaron just did in the video. I told you it was a college level course. But what I think you should take away from it is just simply the idea of experiment with it, change it, and see if it made it look better or does it make it look worse. And sort of just roughly thinking about, where does it put the light? Does it put the light from coming from higher or coming from lower? And is the light softer or harder? And a softer light is always better for people pictures. And the light should be coming from above your subject rather than below. So that was really good stuff. And I think if you just take the ideas from that one video and learn those, you're going to be a better photographer. So Joey, you're going to, well, first, I shouldn't run past that. Anybody else have anything to add? Aaron or Frank or Joey, anything to add? Anybody have questions?
One of my favorite things to do is when I'm watching like my favorite shows, movies, or stuff like that. If my eye is caught by some lighting in that situation, I stop and I pay attention and I try to figure out what's happening there to create that. That's not something that I did before I got into photography, but when I did start getting into photography, I realized trying to really see that light is really what it's all about. So I encourage you to do the same thing while you're watching your shows or movies. Pay attention. If there's a cool looking scene, stop and think, ooh, how did they do that?
When you start looking for it, you'll be amazed at what you see.
Mm-hmm.
Can I say that the first time I ever seen it was when Steve Latta took my grandson's photos? And I was like, oh my gosh, how is he doing? Like, I was in awe watching him. I don't even think I hardly helped because I couldn't stop watching what you were doing.
We were using the window in the back of our living room. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, it really makes a difference just changing what a set of blinds. That's a modifier. So we have all these modifiers we use professionally: umbrellas, grids, reflectors. But we were just using everyday things. And again, your phone isn't something you're going to control, but you're controlling the person, and you can try to control the environment. Just wiggle them around a little bit, find the answer. Doesn't mean they're going to be perfect every time, but look, keep looking. It doesn't always come in that first try.
Good stuff. Any of our class members have questions? All right. So Joey, why don't you take us into the next chapter here?
Sure. This next video continues this theme that we've been talking about of noticing, of noticing light. And so this is a common situation indoors that a lot of us will find ourselves in, is that there will be an overhead light. And you'll notice in these videos, whether we're inside or outside, that you can carry a lot of these themes. Doesn't matter if you're inside or outside or night photography, these concepts and themes carry over. And so what you'll see in this video is similar to noonday light or midday light if you're outside. Those shadows that get created on the face that are sometimes unflattering. We'll see that inside with a direct overhead light. So I'll get into this video.
All right, back to our characteristics of light. One of the most normal things we see inside of a house or indoors is we're utilizing the lights that are up on the ceiling. There they are up there, everybody's got them, It does help illuminate the room, but for portraits and for pictures, what we might notice is that being directly underneath the light creates some pretty hard shadows. Everybody see these shadows on my face? Maybe not the best look. So watch what happens. Let's take a picture like this. So Steve, if you wouldn't mind to take a picture of me right here. Great. And let's see what happens as I move a little bit away from this source of light to see if that angle and direction will change and help my face look a little better. So as I back up away from the light, As I back up away from the light, now the light has some room to fall off and fill in these shadows a little bit more. As you can see right now, it's not as harsh. So it might be better to pay attention to those overhead lights and maybe move people away and not be right underneath them. So that way everybody looks a little nicer. So Steve, why don't you go ahead and take a picture and see how the light looks a little better. All right, there you go, overhead lighting.
So you can see how the angle and the intensity of the light changed by Aaron just stepping away, 8 or 10 feet, which is kind of similar to if you're outside, why morning light and evening light is generally more pleasing, especially for portrait photography on the subject, is because the sun is the angle and the intensity is more pleasing on the subject. So just being aware of that overhead light and moving your subject accordingly can really make a big difference. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, it was much more flattering when she moved away. All I saw was
Wasn't it?
yeah, the shadows in the eye. That happens quite often and people don't even realize it, but it's, it looks like you got black eyes or raccoon eyes. I've heard a lot of different, sayings with it, but it's a harsher light, it's harder light, but it's in the middle of the room. I mean, you're not moving the light, you're not moving the sun, you're moving your camera or you're moving your subject in every situation. And again, it really makes a big difference and a subtle little change. Oh, just take a couple steps and there you go. Drake, you have a question?
Yeah, just a small little one. Has anyone ever, if you're in the middle of the day and sunlight's directly above you and it's getting those shadows, pulled out their umbrella and set it up, or carried it on them and turned that light and angled it at someone?
Like using just the umbrella or actually using an external light as well?
I'm talking more of the umbrella.
Okay.
But
Absolutely. I mean, you could use that as an artistic style choice. I own a giant golf white umbrella for that reason.
Yeah.
Because I always thought if I ever wanted to take a picture of somebody at high noon and wanted a, that feminine look, it would be a lovely way to do that. So yeah, but you could also do the same thing by finding a shaded area, or just finding shade cover anywhere in your environment. But an umbrella, yes, just be aware that whatever color that thing is that's reflecting the light will also give color to the light that gets reflected off. So if you've got a bright red umbrella, the light that gets reflected off is quite definitely going to have that red look as well. So that's a great idea, though. I love that.
So Jan Hobbs had a comment here. Jan, why don't you want to talk? You can unmute yourself.
She might not be in on
She might not be.
Yeah.
So she just wrote, doesn't the window light behind the subject make a big difference also? Yeah, it sure does, but it's also something that you're fighting with and you're trying to balance out.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can avoid having that bright sunlight behind them, that's less light that you have to throw at the subject to fill in. Because essentially you put someone in front of a window and now they're a silhouette. And the camera has a tough time balancing that bright light behind them with virtually no light in front of them unless you reflect it back or you use some sort of electronic flash. So not the best choice. If you have them in front of a window, again, move them or slightly away or turn them or rotate yourself, change your angle. Use the window to your advantage. Don't just leave it behind the subject if you can avoid it, especially with a cell phone, because there's no real way to connect an external flash to those.
Mm-hmm.
And portrait mode's not going to help. The brightness adjustment might be your only hope of saving it. But
I was going to say one of the big morals to the story here is make all the changes you can make while you're taking the picture is far better than trying to fix it in Photoshop later. Get more light on your subject's face, fill those shadows in. I like the idea of the reflector, some type of a thing. I have one of those little pop-up expandable reflectors that's about 24 inches, and then it folds up into a small thing. It's basically any light colored object that you hold up next to the camera. If the sun hits that, it bounces at your subject and becomes a fill flash,
Yeah.
a fill light, and fills in those shadows. Good
I-
stuff.
Just like a big piece of white poster board that you buy at Walmart.
I was just gonna say that was my high-tech reflector, was a $2 poster board.
Yeah. A piece of 8x10 sheet of foam core that you just hold it in a clipboard, you know.
Yeah.
A piece of white paper.
Right.
Mhm.
Anything. You gotta
Pizza
get
box.
creative sometimes. What'd you say, Paul?
A pizza box.
Yeah,
A pizza
there you go.
box.
Hey, that has double benefit. I like that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. You get to eat it and use it. Oh, that's awesome. Anyone else? Any other comments or questions? Anyone else want to speak up for that?
I was just going to say, I think it's useful you mentioned test it out and see, but to kind of keep these things in mind for events, is it, Christmas, family gatherings, stuff like that, where you're going to take a picture, just trying to size up where's the best place in this room. And you can kind of test that stuff out, play with the blinds before it's time. But at some point, somebody's going to say, hey, let's take a picture. And you can kind of guide them of like, over here is going to be better.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
there's
and
a
that-
photographer right there. That's a
There-
thinking photographer.
It
Planning
is.
ahead of time. Yep.
Mhm.
Right. On your toes there, Malcolm. Good job. So that brings us to the next video, which is outside seeing the light. So this is sort of our next visit back outdoors. But what if you have a great background you want to use, but the lighting is bad? Again, how do we fix it? Think about it. Think of what we've already covered, and we'll discuss right after.
Sometimes old buildings provide really great backgrounds. And here's this really cool looking doorway. I've got Aaron out here in the little alley in between buildings, and we've got this cool old rustic wood. I want to use this background. But right now from this angle, I don't like this bright sunlight on Aaron's face. And again, we want to learn to see the light and work with it a little bit better. So let's try to use the shadow area rather than this bright sunny area. And I think the picture will look better. Aaron, let's back you up into that doorway and just go up into the doorway. Now look at this overall even lighting that we have. We could actually take a great image from right here. Aaron, let's kick a foot out this way for me a little bit. I like that right there. That makes a great shot. I'm going to go ahead and get one of those. Now I'm going to come in a little closer, and we're going to use the shape of that doorway a little bit and have some fun with it, but come closer. There's a great picture. What if we change the angle? Aaron, I'm going to have you turn around this way toward, in fact, stay just how you are. There we go. I like that. Hand on the hip. And I kind of like how we see Aaron's reflection in the window now. I'm going to back up and use the whole doorway a little bit. I like that a whole lot. Now I want to see a little more of that wood texture. So I'm going to come in closer and look at a little higher camera angle, how this helps and create some diagonal shape to the picture. Very nice.
All right. So again, great example of rotating the camera around, just coming from the other angle, right? Now, one thing you got to watch out for when you're using the sun, basically as a hairlight, or in that shot, it was reflecting off of the building to the left of Ozark Coffee. So my favorite place when I'm at my home away from home is that coffee shop. But you saw a flare coming across the lens. So that flare is actually the sun bouncing around in that lens. And that's why we have those lens hoods on our DSLRs, to sort of protect us from that stray light that's bouncing around. But how can you fix that with your cell phone? Well, just by cupping your hand and sort of shielding the lens from any of that stray light. you would avoid any of that. And it's really hard to see, right? Oh, Aaron's got a piece of paper up. It's impossible to see when you're in the moment, when Steve was working. And it can be difficult to see on a DSLR as well, but always keep an eye out for it. And it might be something that's kind of cool and intentional that you may see, and you see it in movies, you see it in ads. It does catch your eye, but it can be good and bad. Again, there's two sides to that coin. But we're going all the way back again to these fundamentals of angle, direction, quality, intensity, temperature. And that's what the camera's doing. The word photograph means light drawing. Without that light, without positioning our subject in the right spot, it doesn't matter what camera we have in front of us. All right. The cell phone just happens to be the most convenient, and we want you to get the best out of your pictures. So just those subtle little tweaks are going to make a huge difference for your pictures.
Yeah.
Frank, I gotta say, just watching that video now, I caught another mistake I made there. I was too busy trying to think of what I was saying. I didn't notice I got a cameo appearance by our videographer in the window as well.
I saw that too.
Yeah.
Joey was lurking in the background there.
Yeah. He was.
Watch what you have in the background, right?
I should have noticed that and changed my angle a little bit.
It's okay. You had a beautiful reflection of Aaron, but
Well,
Joey.
to really be like, this is my new phone. This is that Pixel 7. It has that new magic eraser thing, which I'm still learning. But it does exactly that. It's this fancy little tool inside my camera app where I can just say, oh, I don't want that, and it will erase it. So you might have that too. Check it out.
Check it out for
Thanks.
sure. All right. So moving along, any questions? So before I move to the next video, anybody want to comment? Oh, Gordon.
Yeah, the one thing that caught me is the sun flare. What I've found in my experience is a large contributor to sun flare is the lens just being dirty with a thumbprint or something like that. Anytime I'm taking a picture that I care about with my cell phone, I generally clean the lens off before I take it.
Yeah,
That is a great tip.
great.
Great tip.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
How dirty these things get. You think, it's in my pocket, no big deal.
Oh yeah, and it has a little bit of that leftover pizza from the pizza box, right?
Right. I do the same thing, Gordon. I always just kind of, it's amazing how much a difference it makes. Thank you for saying that.
Yes, thanks for bringing that up, Gordon.
Yeah. Well, so to kind of tag along and move on here is, the light that we use, a photographer is a painter of light. That's what we do. And that's what we're teaching you guys to see, is how to see your media. Painters use acrylics. Photographers use light. So this is your media for your art. All right. Something that we need to discuss, though, is not every source of light is the same in the same area. I'm in a room right now where I have several different sources of light. So this lamp behind me is a different color, intensity, angle, direction. I have a lamp in front of me. If I turn it off, you would see provides a different color of light. And then also I have a window over here, which is giving me this nice cool light. So let's watch this next video to learn a little something about how the different points of light in an area can give you different options.
All right, so let's also discuss the idea that some windows or some points of light might be better than others, might give you more of what you want. In this particular room, what we have here is a window facing the sunlight, and it's just getting a ton of sun. This is a very bright point of light. And maybe that's something I can utilize to increase the light in my picture. But if I go over to this other window that's facing a different direction, right here, you're gonna see this window in particular is not really facing the sunlight as much. And as I adjust the blinds, I still get some light in the room, but maybe not as much as the other one, or at least it isn't as a direct light. What I have over here, since this is reflected light, the sunlight isn't coming in directly, the color of the light changed. So what happens now is we have a cooler look to our image, but it's a little more diffused since that light is reflecting off the outdoors, the buildings in the street and the things that are outside. That light is reflecting and diffusing. So when it comes through the blinds, it's actually a little more diffused than it was in the other window. Maybe we like this. Maybe having the blinds open like this isn't as bad. If you look at my body, you're going to see you don't see those stripes as much as you did at the other window. The intensity is not as much. The quality of the light is different. It's more diffused. So you can also, this is also going to show that it's a matter of which point of light you use to affect your picture. You can look around and make choices depending on what you're looking for. Okay. So now Steve's going to come over and take some photos of me utilizing this window light and the way the blinds are set. And we're going to see actually how the setting of the blinds is going to work conversely than it did in the other window here because it's a more reflected light. So Steve comes on in to take a photo of me. What we're going to see here is the light's actually coming upwards. Maybe not the best direction of light for people. We call this like the horror movie look. Not the best thing. So let's go ahead and take a picture like this. Even though the light is diffused, it's not as harsh and you don't see those stripes as much. It's coming upwards on my face, maybe not the best look. So let's see if we can change the direction of the light. Let's go right about there. Now, since I've changed the direction of the blinds, the direction of the light is coming downwards, a little more pleasing to the face. So let's take a picture like that.
Turn a little more this way.
There we go. So again, it's just a matter of what you want to see in your photo as to what you do with your light and your subject.
There you go. And that's pretty simple. So you can just simply move your blinds. You can, if you have the curtains with what I call like the white curtain, what do we call those? The diffusing curtains that are inside the nice prettier curtains, those actually create a beautiful diffused light. Using those would be fantastic because the light just filters through and it's nice and light. But as always, there are 360 degrees to use whenever using a point of light or a point of interest. If one angle isn't working, turn. Try a different angle. It might just be the trick, the answer to making that picture look better, or having your subject stand up or sit down, move away, that sort of thing. There are a lot of options.
Yeah. I liked how you demoed the light coming. What did you call it? Horror movie light?
Yeah, horror movie light.
And everyone's got an
Nobody needs to see that.
Right. You're lighting from below, so you're throwing light up on their and usually if you see that kind of light in a movie, who is it? It's usually the villain, right?
Yeah.
It's the bad guy. It's like Dracula lighting, or lighting that you would do at Halloween. You put the flashlight underneath your face. It's scary. It's not intended to be a flattering light. And so just how she changed that angle, again, angle direction, that subtle little change made a huge difference. And I love at the end how Steve just went and turned your head towards the light. So we always want our subjects' faces facing the light and not necessarily in the brightest part of the light. You went to, an area that had reflective light coming off of a building, coming through the window and then hitting you. So a completely different position. And again, it seems like we're talking about the same thing. We're not. These are all different little nuances of lighting that we all have to deal with at any given time, right? And there's not a lot you can do with your phone as far as adjusting exposure, just those subtle little changes, but making it right. If you're going to edit it later, garbage in, garbage out. You have to get as best of a quality as you can from that little cell phone, and it's all you have in many cases, but at least you have it, right? Anything else anyone else wants to add?
Any questions?
All right, I think we
No.
got
Rolling right along. All right.
rolling right along. Yeah.
So our next video, guys, is we're going to continue this discussion of window light. You know, window light is really one of the best forms of lighting. It's one of the best light sources. I had a chance to tour a photographer's studio from the late 1800s just this last weekend, and they had these beautiful north-facing windows, the old classic Northern Light studio, where northern light, which would never have direct sunlight coming in those windows, gives you this beautiful soft light. Well, sometimes you have a window, though, that is beautiful itself, and you might look at it and say, ooh, let's do a picture in front of that window because the window's gorgeous. But if the window's also the light source, we need to know how to best get a photo involving a window so that the subject still looks good, because I'm assuming we're not taking pictures of windows, we're taking pictures of people. So how to best take pictures of people using a window, whether we include the window in the photo or not. So here we go.
Let's talk a little bit about the windows. We want to use our windows in a way that is helping our subject rather than maybe taking a picture of the window. So we've got ourselves this nice big window. It's beautiful. I really like the old wood and the curtains and all that things. It's lovely, but I maybe don't want to take a picture with the subject and the window. Maybe I just want to use the light from the window, because this window is actually giving us some very diffuse, beautiful light. So let's take a couple of different angles. We're going to change the angle of the camera to utilize the light from the window in a better way. So if I were just to stand in front of the window just like this, and we'll take a picture from this angle, well, we're definitely going to see the window. But what we also see is a whole lot of outdoors, because the camera is having a hard time seeing the difference between the bright light outdoors and the darker light indoors. I'm probably a silhouette, and it's just not a great look. But I can simply change the angle of the image, have the camera come a little more this way, where I'm utilizing the light of the window rather than having the window in the picture itself. So let's try that. All right, so as you can see in this particular setup, we've got our subject right here, kind of towards the far end of the window, and all this light is coming in, and it's just kind of filtering around my face and making it look very softly illuminated. And our camera is directly in front of the subject, so that way we're not actually taking a picture of the window, we're just using the light from the window. So let's go ahead and take a picture like this and see what it looks like, and we'll make a couple other adjustments as well. As you can see, what I did in that particular image is I made sure that my face was turned towards the window to get the maximum amount of light. If I turned my face away from the window, I would have had less light, and it would make the image look a little different. Again, these are just artistic choices, what you like, but this is how you see the light. Something else that can change is if I step a little closer to the camera, then I've got more light behind me rather than in front of me. So that changes the quality and the intensity of the light as well. So it's something to consider. So use the light in your windows to your advantage. We don't have to stand in front of them necessarily, but if we just stand next to them, they can give us this nice, beautiful, diffused light, and you could take a gorgeous portrait.
All right, that was really good. And yes, it may sound a little bit repetitive, like, okay, we've talked about that. I think maybe a good way to look at it is, what are the principles involved that we're talking about? And here, the principle is, again, noticing where your light is coming from and what's the best way to use that light to make your subject look good. Changing the position of the camera and the subject relative to the light source can make all the difference. And I think we saw that in those examples. Anything to add, guys? Drake has a question. Go ahead, Drake.
Yeah. Is there anything other than our eyes that we can use to measure the light?
You could get light meters and things like that. That's not going to do you much good with a cell phone camera. We may do future versions of Beyond the Studio where we get into that type of detail. I think what we want to learn in this series is how to use that tool that we all have in our pocket and how to best use that tool. And so earlier we talked about possibly overriding its exposure controls by tapping and sliding. In this case, we didn't have to do that at all. All we had to do was put the light in the right position relative to the subject, or you could say put the subject in the right position relative to the light. Same net result. And we had a much better picture by doing that. So,
yeah, and there was no modifier on that window. It was just straight light coming in.
yep.
But that the direction of it, and I don't know if it's north or not, but it was beautiful light and it's soft, but you can see how the camera struggles. Like it can't see both. It can only see one or the other, and it tries really hard to grab both. But that highlight brightness, the highlight shadow, the brightness range between those 2 points is too much when you point the camera right at a bright, a bright object. And we're going to see that one more time in the next video. But I think it's important to state that, all he's doing is just moving so that we're just using the light that's around us, the ambient light, because that's what cell phones are designed to grab. And they do a great job, but not if you just willy-nilly, and I've done it. Okay, family, get over there. And I take pictures of my kids or my wife or something, and I screw it up. And you know what? Oh, hold on. We take 2 steps to the right, we turn a little bit, and everything's better, right? And it's just that subtle change. An inch is a mile in photography. She stepped forward a foot and a half, completely different, person, right? And it's just all about those subtleties that we need to start teaching ourselves to see. And if you can't see it with your eye, Drake, it's okay. Just take the picture. Oh, I made a mistake. Move on and take another one. It's just, something that you can delete later if you don't like it. It's not a big deal.
Can I jump in and say something?
Sure, yeah.
Hello, everyone. I know I can't see everybody. This has been great. I was just going to say, as I was listening in, there was a lot of history in that photo that you just shared, because one, when you took a picture and looked through the window, you actually had in the building, not directly behind you, but the one right behind that was where my grandfather grew up, was in that building, 616.
Cool.
So we're talking about the history of photography, and that would have been back in the teens that he grew up there. But then also the early school photography, that is what those photographers did. They went the one-room schoolhouses they went to, they used the windows on the north side of the schoolhouse for the light, because if ever, again, in the 20s and 30s, they didn't have power in a lot of those buildings. So that was how they illuminated those images. So I'm just kind of, it was more funny to me that we're using a cell phone and now talking about going back to using light out of a window. We've moved forward, but yet back. So
I'm so glad you brought that up, Eric, because I think in the museum there are examples of the images that you're talking about. Like, you can see some young ladies, 1920s young ladies, right next to a window.
That's it.
And that's an example of what you're talking about here.
Yep. That's how they used to have to do the professional. So it's just interesting. And I believe we did a spring program one time that was reflections or something that we tried to kind of replicate. Anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, just saying hi to everybody. And I thought this was great. And I'll let the professionals keep going. So yeah.
That's a great idea for Gordon and Corey up in Pennsylvania. There's a bunch of Amish schools we might be able to photograph after all.
There you go.
I'm on it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, guys, I think we have one more good video that Joey's gonna intro for us.
Yeah, so this is our last one. And you'll see something in this video that's really similar to what Aaron was doing with the window light, but this is moving in relation to a pendant light or some pendant lighting that's in the kitchen area. And you'll also notice kind of in your mind, replay what that image looked like with the big window light. Try to remember that compared to in this next video, what the lighting looks like on Aaron's face with the smaller light source, because that's something too with the quality of light that's on your subject. The size of the light source can have a big impact. Like a big window is soft, if it doesn't have, the direct light coming through. It can be soft if it's like that north facing window, but a smaller light source, it can work well, but it can create more defined shadows on the face, like with the nose and the cheeks and different things. So pay attention in this video to the light and how she moves in relation to this pendant lighting.
Let's change the characteristics of light again. So in this particular situation, I'm going to be utilizing these pendant lights here. There's 2 of them. They're nice and bright. They look really nice to illuminate the photo. So where I'm standing right now, the direction and the quality of the light from these pendant lights maybe isn't the best choice for a portrait, because what we see right now is this light and direction and intensity is pretty harsh. So I've got a nice light side of the face, but a pretty dark side of the face too. Having that half and half look maybe isn't what I'm looking for. So what can I do? Well, first of all, let's see a picture of what this looks like. So if Steve wouldn't mind to come on in and take a picture of it. Something else that we need to consider in this moment is watch your background. So as Steve comes in to take a photo, maybe he accidentally gets the angle to where the pendant light itself is in the back of the photo. The phone itself is going to have a hard time figuring out the exposure on that because it's going to see a really bright point of light and it's going to want to decrease the exposure so that way my face is much darker than it should be. So be careful what's in the view of the camera. All right, so what can I do to make this better? Well, simply this. I'm just going to take a little step to the side and you're going to see how the light changes. So if you watch my face, as I move over here, it's right over here. Now the light direction and quality and intensity has changed. So now the direction of the light has now come, instead of from the side to my face, now it's a little bit in front of my face and is coming across more of my face, illuminating my face nicely. And in this image, the lighting, the quality of the light here is a little more soft, but we still see some shadows here. We see just a little tiny shadow under my nose, just maybe a little bit right here. That's actually mimicking portrait lighting, what most professional photographers will use to take portraits in a studio setting. If you look at where my light is right now, it's at a very pleasing angle to the face. You can just be utilizing your kitchen lights.
So like Aaron pointed out, that is in a lot of way mimicking what we're doing in studio lighting. We're using a reflector or a modifier to soften the light some. That was kind of a direct light. It did have not the shade, but the globe, I guess, around it, which would soften it some. But in a lot of ways, that's very similar to studio lighting, the way that light was hitting her face. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I always say something funny when I'm training photographers about, for me, photography is just flashlights and duct tape. It's amazing what you can create out of nothing. And that's the fun that I have found and the joy that I find in photography is being a MacGyver and finding different and creative ways to make beautiful portraits and memories. Even with our cell phones, these things still make beautiful and important memories. And so we do, as a team, feel like it's very important to reach out to all of our coworkers and all of our friends here at Interstate and talk about this, because we want you to have the same experience. We want you guys to have the same sort of beautiful memories and beautiful photographs to hold on to.
I loved how Steve did the magic turn of his hand, and he didn't say a word to you. It was like subliminal. But what was he doing? He was turning you towards the light to get that short loop lighting that we always talk about in portraits. But it's right there in the kitchen with a pendant light, right? And again, no fancy tools in our phone. And we're making it happen. And you guys can do the same thing. There's no reason you can't try all of these techniques. There's a lot packed into this video. You may want to watch this again. As far as we're recording it, we're going to put it out there, we're going to share it, and we are going to do this again in a week, folks. So we'll have more to touch on, a little more advanced stuff, but we focused on the fundamentals for you today because it's important to see all these characteristics that we've been touching on. And you know what? I loved it. It was a lot of fun to work on. I didn't get to do the whole first half because I think I was working on something else that week. But gosh, just to hear the excitement from them as they came back, and it's something different for us to do. So instead of focused on portrait, and nailing everything down, we get to do something fun like this. So thank you for having us. I appreciate you guys sticking around an hour and 15 minutes, hopefully.
Does anybody have any questions or anything they want to talk about? I mean, it's a good time to throw it out there.
Right.
I appreciate you guys doing this. Awesome. Sorry I dropped you right when I was going to talk.
No worries at all.
Yeah.
Kathy.
Kathy, are we going to cover night photos? I don't know if we covered night photos, but we can get into that next week for sure. We can add something to it. Drake raised his hands too. And night photography, honestly, Kathy, it's you can set it to night, but you just keep the thing really still. Oh my goodness. And try not to even breathe when you're taking the picture, because even that can blur the image. The phone does a great job for night though. But Drake, you have another question?
Well, Kathy posted something too on fireworks, but I'm curious about, you mentioned placement of the individual, and I was wondering if more positions of the individual, and if you were going to go over that next time or this time.
As far as posing is concerned, or
well, just anything to do with posting.
We can, we don't really have posing, I think, on the list quite yet, but we can actually add it in. I mean, we're doing this, you know, kind of in an evolving way. So if that's something that you're interested in, that might be something that we pick up at some time in the future. So I appreciate the suggestion.
Yeah, for sure.
Aaron, we did a little bit of that. There was the videos where the camera position and the angle to the body. So we do have a little bit of that. We probably could do an entire series on that, but we do cover some of that next time.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, for fireworks, it's almost impossible when the cell phone is just automatically trying to adjust the focus point. But if you take a video and then just screenshot the perfect shot or a live photo, you got a better chance.
That's a great tip, Ian. I mean, because you're right, there's a lot to deal with fireworks. You've got an extremely dark situation with an extremely fast and bright light. To try to focus and get good images, still shots is very hard to do, but taking a video is not hard and easy to take a screenshot.
And I have to say, when it comes to fireworks, you probably should just watch the fireworks, because they're much more stunning when you're watching them than they ever look in the photo. Same thing if you go somewhere to see the Northern Lights, just watch the Northern Lights. It's so much more beautiful in reality than looking at a photo.
Kristen says something about most of our cameras have a flash. Any input on using flash and getting good pics with the cell phone? As far as the flashes that come on your cell phone, at least in my experience, really aren't very effective. I mean, to a certain extent, they really are only working. Gosh, Steve, how much would you say? Maybe 3 feet in front of you.
Yeah, it's just a little LED light, really.
Yeah.
And so it'll light up a completely dark scene somewhat, but not much beyond 5 or 6 feet, I would say, at the most.
Right. If whatever you're trying to illuminate is more than 3 to 5 feet away from your camera, your flash isn't really doing a whole lot. I honestly don't use my flash very often, if at all. I only use it if I'm taking a picture of something very detailed and very close to the camera, but that's rare.
Yeah, it's trying to capture that perfect amount of light in your scene, and then you're throwing additional light at it. And if it's not, I mean, I don't use my flash either on my camera. I turn all that off. I just look for a better area, move. Yeah,
that's
better off. Don't try and fight it and make something happen out of nothing.
Layla actually raised a hand. I feel like I skipped over, so I apologize, Layla.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. I just think it'd be fun to see how you guys would do when you talk about positioning. You know, when you see them take the phone and turn it upside down and hold it very low to the ground and do angles like that, I think that'd be interesting.
Well, and Layla, I think that honestly goes to the point of get on any of the social medias, and there are a blue million tutorials on how to take better photos. And in this particular situation, we weren't trying to write the book here because we know that that's impossible. We were just trying to give our spin on it. But you're right. I love watching those and watching how people do artistic things with these, you know, simple little cameras. That it's possible. Just hop out there and check it out.
Yeah, and I thought this was great today. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kathy wrote, was it Kathy or no, Drake? Drake had another comment. What about holding down the photo button to take more light? I've gotten some good dark photos by taking it in light for longer. So Drake, it should automatically, like, it's trying to bring you to the middle. It's trying to bring you to a good exposure, like roughly what you see on 18% gray, right? It's trying to take the darkest dark or the brightest bright and bring it to the middle. So it's not really something you're controlling other than that little slider, and it will take an exposure for longer. So it's leaving the camera open longer to pull in more light and absorb that light, just like a sponge would for water, right? It's soaking in light. So yeah, you definitely want to hold it as still as possible, and you can capture that light a little bit longer, and it'll actually start to show on my iPhone seconds. And it's got all kinds of things inside of there that it's trying to keep your image from blurring. Accelerometers, and it knows the positioning, and, you know, depending on if you have it flipped up or down. But Layla, I love the idea of the low angles, especially of the dogs. So, you know, you get right down to the dog's eye view and hold it right on the floor, and you're kind of looking up at them. It's pretty cool. But there is unlimited things that you guys can do and learn and play with on your cell phone or on real cameras, right? And that just takes you guys one step further of understanding how a real camera works versus a cell phone camera, because it is a little bit different, right? It's not quite mirrorless, and there's no interchangeable lenses. So we are kind of stuck with what's on the front of this, but we can still be really creative and capture some great memories for our friends and families. Any other comments? Anything else? Everybody, okay. Next week, you guys, we'll see you then. Same time, same place. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank y'all.
Great.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Great
you all.
job.
Thank you.